Justin Trudeau has been in Europe and attended a session of European Parliament where a number of MEPs had very strong words to say against him. Why don't we have a look?
Based on Article 195, out that it would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
And it didn't stop there. Here's another one.
Poštovane kolege, dragi građani, premijeru Trudeau. Sloboda, pravo izbora, pravo na život i zdravlje, pravo na rad za mnoge od nas, to su temeljna ljudska prava za koje su milijuni građana Europe i svijeta položili svoje živote. Za obranu naših prava i prava naše djece, koje smo stjecali stoljećima, mnogi od nas, uključujući i mene, spremni smo riskirati vlastitu slobodu i položiti vlastite živote. Nažalost, danas su među nama i oni koji gaze te temeljne vrijednosti. Kanada, nekada simbol modernog svijeta, je pod vodstvom vaše kvazi liberalne čizme proteklih mjeseci postala simbol kršenja temeljnih ljudskih prava i građanskih sloboda. Gledali smo kako konjima gaze žene, kako samohranim roditeljima blokirate bankovne račune, da ne mogu platiti djeci školovanje, da ne mogu platiti lijekove, da ne mogu platiti račune za struju i vodu, da ne mogu platiti rate kredita za svoje domove. Za vas su to možda liberalne metode. Međutim, za mnoge građane svijeta to je diktatura najgore vrste. Budite uvjereni da građani svijeta, udruženi, mogu zaustaviti svaki režim koji želi uništiti slobodu građana, bilo bombama, bilo štetnim farmaceutskim proizvodima. Hvala.
And yet another one.
The Prime Minister of Canada, the way he's behaving right now, he's exactly like a tyrant, like a dictator. He's like Ceausescu in Romania. If even you doubt, if you raise doubts about the vaccines, you're outcasted. What's the difference between what he does and what happened under the Inquisition? See, on one side they say, well, we should not believe in God, but on the other side they say, believe in science. We don't have to. Science is not about belief. Science is about measurements, conclusions, hypotheses, and arguments. We got to a point right now where even if you say something, if you raise any doubts, you're already considered, as whatever, they label you in very different ways. This is not okay. And I have to tell you, that when I saw the protests in Canada, the way the truckers over there reacted, I got in touch with some of them, others contacted me, I congratulated them, and I want to use this opportunity to thank them, and I hope this movement for freedom and for rights is spreading all around the world, because at the end of the day we have to make sure that all these elected officials, they understand that they were elected in those offices to work for the people, not to behave like masters of slaves. Thank you.
And interestingly about this last one I'm about to show you is this German representative actually tried to stop Trudeau from even being able to present his speech at the European Parliament. Have a look.
President, honourable members, we keep discussing here our European democratic values that underpin all of our actions. I worked in Syria and Pakistan for many years as a diplomat, and therefore value democracy very highly. Now, the invitation to Canadian PM Justin Trudeau is an invitation to someone who's been trampling on democratic rights, who's been cracking down on people who protested against disproportionate corona measures, peoples who were supporting a non-sanctioned movement coming under criticism. So clearly the values of democracy are being despised by this individual. Let us not give someone like this any speaking time in this House of Democracy.
And interestingly enough, as Justin Trudeau did go to make his speech, a large number of members of parliament actually left before he could do so in protest of what he had to say. Here's one more clip from Justin this time talking about democracy.
Putin thought democracy was weak. He saw our disagreements and debates as weakness. But what he has never understood is that the rigors of debate, that forceful civic engagement, is what makes us strong. And that democracy, at its best, will always be stronger than authoritarianism. But if we're going to be honest, and we need to be honest in this place, we haven't always been at our best these past years. Putin thought we were divided. He thought he could weaken the EU and NATO. He miscalculated, and he is seeing it backfire. NATO and the EU are now more resolved and united than ever, because all of us in this room who are committed to democracy know in our bones that democracy didn't happen by accident, and it will not continue without deliberate, mindful effort.
And I think this is why there's been such a high level of confusion in Canada as to why mainstream media seems to be sort of blind to the way not only the rest of the world sees Justin Trudeau, but even the vast majority of Canadians. One fact that often shocks people is people who are not living in Canada, and even some people who are living in Canada, don't realize that only 30% of voters actually voted for Justin Trudeau in the last election, basically stating that the vast majority of the population who did vote did not want him in power. And just recently, Justin Trudeau teamed up with the leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, to basically keep himself in power till 2025 by giving Jagmeet and his party sort of access to having some of their own policies pushed through on behalf of the Liberal government if they agree to basically side with them on a number of issues that would ultimately keep Justin in power. And to me, this is anything other than democracy. And this is why people are getting upset. This is why, the Freedom Convoy happened to some extent, is people are looking at the nature of government, how it's operating, the authoritarian sort of position that's been going on here in Canada for the last little while. And they're saying, we don't trust this. We don't like this. We don't want anything to do with this. And in return, the government is turning around calling these people names. So, again, there's not much to say here. It's all pretty self-explanatory, but the reality of the situation is we're yet again at this time where trust is being lost, and for good reason. Everyone else seems to understand that what Trudeau is doing is not something that should be respected, yet here in Canada, mainstream media continues to protect him in almost everything he does. Why?